we are breaking down a story so explosive, so shocking, it threatens to tear the Roloff family and the show itself apart forever. We have been following this for weeks, piecing together information from our trusted sources inside the production and the Hillsborough community, and what we've uncovered is a tale of manipulation and deceit that goes deeper than anyone could have imagined. It was a terrifying story of harassment that shocked the fan base when it first broke. A story of slashed tires, threatening notes, and a woman living in fear. But the real horror is that the victim was also the perpetrator, and it was all caught on tape. The story you are about to hear is based on insider reports and exclusive theories pieced together by our team. This is the story of the restraining order hoax. Before we dive into the mountain of evidence and the shocking courtroom betrayals, do me a favor. If you believe in getting to the truth, and if you've ever felt that something wasn't quite right behind the scenes of Little People, Big World, then hit that like button right now. And if you're not already subscribed, click that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You are not going to want to miss a single update on this developing story. This is the biggest scandal in the show's history, and we will be here covering every single twist and turn. It all began in November of 2025. The headlines were brutal, painting a picture of a beloved family matriarch spiraling out of control. TMZ, People Magazine, The Sun, they all ran with the story, fueled by carefully leaked documents from the Washington County Courthouse. Amy Roloff slapped with restraining order amid harassment claims by Caryn Chandler. The articles were accompanied by grainy photos presented as evidence. A car with a long, ugly scratch down the driver's side door, another showing a tire that was visibly flat, and a close-up of a note tucked under a windshield wiper with jagged, angry-looking letters that read, "Leave him alone or you'll be sorry." Caryn Chandler, in a statement released through a newly hired publicist, claimed to be terrified for her safety. The statement spoke of a pattern of escalating intimidation and unhinged behavior from Amy, which she had allegedly endured for months. It was the culmination of a narrative that had been carefully, almost artistically, constructed for over a decade. This was the foundational lie, the central pillar of Caryn's public persona, that Amy Roloff is a jealous, bitter ex-wife, incapable of moving on, a perpetual thorn in the side of Matt and Caryn's happiness. For years, fans had watched scenes on TLC that seemed to reinforce this. A sharp word from Amy, an eye roll, a moment of frustration, all of it was edited and framed to present her as the problem, while Caryn was portrayed as the patient, understanding partner, the long-suffering woman who just wanted peace. Sources inside the production have told us for years that Caryn was exceptionally skilled at managing her image, often having quiet conversations with producers to suggest camera placement or story angles that would cast her in a favorable light and Amy in a negative one. She was, in essence, producing her own storyline, and the restraining order was set to be her masterpiece. The legal filing was a work of fiction designed for maximum public impact. It detailed alleged incidents with chilling specificity. On October 12th, Caryn claimed she heard someone rattling the doorknob of her and Matt's new house late at night. On October 25th, she found one of her prize-winning roses inexplicably decapitated. And then the grand finale in early November, the slashed tire, the scratched car, and the threatening note, all discovered on a single morning when she was about to leave for a charity event. She presented these incidents to the police and the court as a clear and present danger. The trap was meticulously designed. If the restraining order was granted, Amy would be legally barred from setting foot on large portions of Roloff Farms, the very land she had built and raised her family on. It would be a legal and public relations coup, cementing Caryn's position as the new matriarch and painting Amy as so unstable that she required court intervention. It was a vicious, calculated move designed to utterly destroy Amy's reputation and sever her remaining ties to the farm. But Caryn made one fatal miscalculation. She underestimated Amy Roloff. She saw the woman she had helped portray on television. Emotional, sometimes indecisive, and easily flustered. She didn't see the woman who had weathered decades of a difficult marriage, raised 4 children in the public eye, and navigated the complex politics of a family business. She didn't see a woman who had grown tired of being gaslighted and manipulated, a woman who, a year prior, had decided to prepare for war. Our sources confirmed that in late 2024, Amy had begun to notice a pattern of small, unsettling events. It wasn't anything overt, nothing she could prove, but it was a quiet campaign of psychological warfare. An heirloom photo album from her bookshelf would suddenly be found in the garage. A private conversation she had with Chris on their porch would be twisted and repeated back to her days later by a farmhand, presented as a rumor. Items in her kitchen would be subtly rearranged. It was classic gaslighting, designed to make her feel like she was losing her mind, to make her doubt her own memory and perception. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Amy confided in Chris, who agreed something was deeply wrong. She wasn't paranoid, she was being targeted. So Amy made a decision. She decided to fight back, not with confrontation, but with technology. Quietly, without telling anyone except Chris, she invested several $1,000s in a state-of-the-art security system. This wasn't some off-the-shelf system from a big box store. This was a network of sophisticated, motion-activated, high-definition micro cameras. They were tiny, weatherproof, and equipped with night vision and crystal-clear audio recording. She placed them with strategic precision. One was disguised as a sprinkler head covering the shared farm driveway that both she and Matt's homes used. Another was hidden inside a birdhouse with a perfect view of the parking area near the big house. A third was tucked into the decorative trim of her own porch, covering her front door and yard. She covered every public and private access point around her property. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was creating an insurance policy. She was collecting objective, undeniable truth in a world built on subjective, edited reality. For nearly a year, the cameras recorded nothing more than deer wandering across the lawn and delivery trucks coming and going. And then came the night of November 8th, 2025. When the news of the restraining order broke, Amy was silent. The public, fueled by the leaked reports, largely turned against her. The comments on social media were horrific. I always knew she was crazy. Caryn is a saint for putting up with her. Finally, Matt is free from her drama. Through it all, Amy said nothing. Her lawyer released a simple statement. Ms. Roloff denies these baseless allegations and looks forward to presenting the truth in court. Caryn, meanwhile, was on a media blitz, giving tearful, exclusive interviews to friendly bloggers and gossip sites, detailing her ordeal. She played the victim role to perfection. She was convincing, she was compelling, and it was all a lie. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for late November. The Washington County courtroom was packed. On one side sat Caryn Chandler, flanked by Matt Roloff and a high-powered attorney from a prestigious Portland law firm. Caryn looked somber, occasionally dabbing a tissue at her dry eyes, a portrait of a woman wronged. Matt looked grim, the loyal partner supporting his terrified love. On the other side sat Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick. Amy was calm, composed, her face a mask of quiet resolve. Chris sat beside her, his hand resting reassuringly on her arm. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Caryn's lawyer went first, laying out the case with dramatic flair. He presented the photos of the car, the tire, the note. He spoke of Caryn's fear, her sleepless nights, her feeling of being a prisoner in her own home. He painted a picture of Amy as a woman consumed by a toxic obsession. He then called Caryn to the stand In a soft, trembling voice, she recounted the story she had told the police and the media. She described finding the note, her heart pounding in her chest. She described seeing the deep, vicious scratch on her new Lexus, a gift from Matt. She described the sick feeling of knowing her home was no longer a safe place. Her testimony was flawless. It was a performance worthy of an award. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. It seemed like an open and shut case. Amy Roloff's reputation was about to be officially and legally annihilated. Then it was Amy's lawyer's turn. He was an older, unassuming man, not the flashy type Caryn had hired. He stood up and said, "Your Honor, the defense has no questions for Ms. Chandler at this time. However, we would like to present a single piece of evidence, a video file labeled Exhibit A." Caryn's lawyer immediately objected. "Objection, Your Honor. We have not seen this evidence. This is surprise testimony." Amy's lawyer calmly responded, "It is rebuttal evidence, Your Honor, directly contradicting the sworn testimony of the plaintiff. It was recorded on the plaintiff's property in an area with no expectation of privacy on the night of the alleged incident." The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Albright, looked intrigued. "Objection overruled. I'll allow it. Bailiff, please play the video on the courtroom monitors." A low murmur went through the courtroom. Caryn shot a confused glance at her lawyer. Matt leaned forward in his seat. The large monitors in the courtroom, previously dark, flickered to life. The image was astonishingly clear, a high-definition, black and white picture from a low angle. It was clearly nighttime, but the infrared was so good you could see every detail. The timestamp in the corner read November 8th, 2025, 2:17 a.m. The view was of a driveway, and parked in the center of the frame was Caryn's white Lexus. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, a figure walked into the frame from the left. The person was wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled up low over their face. The figure moved with a familiar, slightly shuffling gait. The figure approached the Lexus, paused, and looked around furtively. Then the figure reached into a pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and tucked it under the windshield wiper of the driver's side door. The courtroom gasped, but it didn't stop there. The hooded figure then reached into another pocket and pulled out a small metallic object. It glinted in the infrared light. It was a key. The figure then pressed the key against the car door, just below the handle, and with a calm, deliberate motion, dragged it along the length of the door, leaving a dark, ugly line in its wake. The figure then stepped back, admired their work for a moment, pulled a cell phone from their pocket to use as a flashlight to inspect the damage, and then turned and walked away, disappearing from the frame. A few moments later, the headlights of a familiar vehicle, Caryn's vehicle, flashed on in the background, and the car drove away from the scene. A collective audible shock rippled through the courtroom. Caryn Chandler had gone white as a sheet, her mouth hanging slightly open in disbelief. Matt Roloff stared at the screen, his face a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. He looked from the screen to Caryn and back to the screen. Amy's lawyer let the silence hang in the air for a moment before speaking. "Your Honor," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "the hooded figure in that video has a very distinctive walk. A walk that the court has had the opportunity to observe this morning as the plaintiff approached the witness stand." He paused. "But we don't need to rely on that. If the court would allow, we can zoom in on the moment the figure leaves the frame." Judge Albright nodded, her eyes wide. "Proceed." The video was replayed, and as the figure turned to leave, the lawyer directed the technician to pause and enhance the image. The hood had shifted slightly, and for a split second, the person's profile was visible in the stark infrared light. The sharp chin, the distinct nose, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. The person who had placed the note and keyed the car was Caryn Chandler. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Caryn's lawyer was on his feet, stammering, but the judge slammed her gavel down, her face a mask of pure fury. "Silence," she boomed. "Silence in this court." When the room had quieted, she turned her gaze, like a laser, onto a visibly trembling Caryn. "Miss Chandler," the judge said, her voice dangerously low, "you have come into my courtroom under oath and presented a story of harassment. You have submitted falsified evidence. You have wasted the time of this court and the resources of law enforcement. You have attempted to use a restraining order, a tool designed to protect actual victims of abuse, as a weapon in what appears to be a personal vendetta." But the nightmare for Caryn was only just beginning, because Amy's lawyer wasn't done. He had another witness, a witness who would not only corroborate the video, but would prove that this act of self-vandalism wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a premeditated conspiracy. "The defense calls Chris Marek to the stand," Amy's lawyer announced. "This was the unexpected internal betrayal. This was the twist no one saw coming." Chris Marek, Amy's husband, the man who had always tried to stay out of the Roloff drama, walked confidently to the witness stand. He was sworn in, and Amy's lawyer began his questioning. "Mr. Marek, do you know the plaintiff, Caryn Chandler?" "Yes, I do." "And in the months leading up to the events of November 8th, did you have any unusual conversations with her?" "Yes. One in particular stands out. It was in late September. Can you please tell the court about that conversation?" Chris took a deep breath and looked directly at the judge. "It was at a family barbecue at the farm. Caryn pulled me aside, away from everyone else. She said she was concerned about Amy. She said Amy's behavior was becoming erratic and unpredictable. She claimed Amy was still obsessed with Matt and was having a hard time accepting her place in the family." A fresh wave of murmurs swept the room. Matt Roloff now looked physically ill. Chris continued, his voice steady and clear. "Then she asked me to do something. She asked me if I would keep an eye on Amy for her. She wanted me to report back to her if Amy said or did anything strange. She said, and I remember her exact words, 'It would be helpful if we had a record of these things, for the future.'" The implication was horrifyingly clear. Caryn wasn't just planning a hoax. She was trying to recruit Amy's own husband into her conspiracy. She was trying to build a case against Amy from the inside, using Chris as her unwitting spy. "And what was your response, Mr. Marek?" the lawyer asked. "I told her that I thought Amy was doing just fine and that her only problem was the constant meddling from her and Matt. I told her I found her request to be inappropriate and manipulative. I told her my wife didn't need to be monitored. The conversation ended there. I told Amy about it as soon as we got home." It was one of the reasons we felt the cameras were a necessary precaution. Chris's testimony was the final devastating blow. It established a pattern of premeditation. It proved beyond any doubt that the restraining order and the faked harassment were part of a larger, calculated plot. The video was a smoking gun, but Chris's testimony was the confession. It showed that Caryn had been laying the groundwork for this takedown for months. Judge Albright